Thank you, Rosemary, for joining me today.
Well, I want to say thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be talking to you again. I don't see you often enough.
No. What would you like to share with us about what you've learnt with your journey in permaculture?
Over the last 5 years in refugee camps in occupied countries such as Srinagar and Afghanistan, I could really see how Western middle-class permaculture was. And it's so interesting because, I have contact with people and they'll ask me something and I'll say, they'll say air pollution's easy, just don't drive cars. And I have a global approach. My mind is actually global. It isn't so Western anymore. So I'll say, well, no, not if you're in Srinagar or Dhaka in Bangladesh or in Afghanistan, because all you've got there may be plastic bags to burn, to keep warm, to cook your food. And then the air quality is such that unknowable numbers of people die of air pollution every year. So my mind is now globalized. And I find that that's difficult for other permaculturists to think about. And there are a couple of big contrasts for me. One is the individualism, which runs through all Western stuff. My garden, my fruit trees, my place, my chickens, my everything. And many of the people I've worked with speak of our community, our chickens, our fruit trees. They're not necessarily eco-villages, but they think of themselves and others.
Yeah.
So if you're living in Afghanistan, you live in a compound with either your husband, your children, your brothers and sisters and their children. There might be 20 people sharing a bathroom and toilet, that sort of thing. And you speak of we. This extreme individualism of Westerners, I don't think it's served permaculture very well. And certainly it affects the curriculum when you teach. So that's one big thing. So I have changed my teaching from, okay, you design your place, and that's your plural, but you work at your street or neighbourhood level. It might be street trees, it might be birch gardens, it might be growing something so people can pick apples or oranges over the fence. In my case, it's kiwi fruit. But you think of how your abundance can serve a very local environment of us. And that is quite a big change because why shouldn't I? I keep reverting every now and again to me and I. And it's a big difference. And another thing is the way people I've been working with for the past decade or so are actually working more with the third ethic of permaculture and the gift economy than we do. There isn't so much talk about money. People would like to have money and better incomes, but much of the conversation is about giving and lending and swapping and working together, probably as a result of the communal cultures. But no, it's different. It's when people have a lot of contact with Westerners, they start talking about, I need money. I need a mobile phone like yours. I need a tablet like yours. I need to fly to your country one day. I need. And suddenly they've moved by association. So that third ethic in permaculture, we talk about swap and markets and bioregion and local, but I think we have to understand it a lot more deeply as an ecosystem. The third ethic, just distribute surplus to need, as it was first written, actually belongs to an ecosystem. Create no pollution with your surplus, right? Use everything completely and pass on what you're not using or surplus to need. And they're quite big things in permaculture because everyone wants to grow a garden. Some people want a farm and others want to take care of people, but I think you only have to create the conditions under which people can flourish. So I say, no, you don't. You can care for them, but you can also dislike them, but take care of them. We cultivate nurture of people, but we don't have to care for them. That's too big an ask for humans, but we can be pleasant and objective and nice not particularly care for them, but certainly make sure the conditions that they live in are as good as we can get. So there are things like that that I'm coming up against in permaculture. And originally I came up with some very chalk talk, sage on the stage teaching, which I felt was directly opposed to care of people.
Mm.
So teaching is often seen as I've got the knowledge of, the empty glass. And I think teaching which behaved as if there's care of people would listen to what they know and what they want to offer and what their queries are. But that is a much more noisy, discussing, interactive classroom.
Yes.
And really, if you are teaching because you want people to look at you or listen to you, or you regard yourself as the source of all knowledge, then you're not taking care of people, because it's not respectful to just deliver. Boredom is when you're saying to yourself, I know, and someone's telling you how to grow a lettuce. So that's been another thing, is to change the teaching process. Be very, very keen and moral and accurate about content, and its growing depths and breadths and delivering quality courses. But it has to be with that process of teaching, which is actually care of people, that everyone does learn and has an opportunity to learn and to express themselves. It's much harder, but once you get fairly good at doing it, it comes more quickly. That comes from a create peace background.
How do you travel sustainably?
In countries, I'm hosted generally by an NGO who's invited me.
Yes.
You can't really turn up at the gates of a refugee camp and say, hey, I'm here to teach you, here am I, I've got all this good stuff for you and you need me, and that sort of thing. There's a whole process that goes through, and we've just finished a book called Teaching in Refugee Camps, and it sets out what you need to do before you go. You've got to have contact, you've got to have a visa. Someone has to get it for you and endorse you if you're going into a camp. You probably end up having a police check. You probably go on to ASIO records in Australia if you're going to places I go to. I raise the money for my own paying fare, but I don't get paid. Any money that comes in while I'm away and I'm not outgoings is fine. Then I work out multiple things to do on that trip.
Right.
Never just go and come back. I will be looking at other projects. I'll be spending time with that host community for quite a long time, having seminars with local permaculture groups, having a look at projects. In a way, I'm again, but the conditions are often awful. The food, it can get to the point when you look at yellow dal in week 2 or 3, laced heavily with chili, stronger than you'd use, but it's a common bowl. I don't think I can eat this anymore. And you give yourself some because you've got a big session coming on in the afternoon. You can't afford to be hungry and a little bit lightheaded. You often share a room at night with as many as 6 other people. There are mosquitoes, there are dogs, there are mice in your luggage, there are noises. We ran into a missionising program in Cox's Bazaar, a missionary program for Islam, all done on loudspeakers, and they shouted all day and all night from slightly out of sync speakers in the neighbouring area. Oh, you just wake up, you reach for your earplugs and you go, no, I need my sleep. Well, it doesn't matter what you need, you've got to do it. But the secret to a really good project is your host wants you and knows enough. You include their staff in the course so that when you finish, they can write a project proposal. Yep. They know what they're talking about and they want to. You include local inhabitants because, as happened in Greece, with Moria camp, the camp was burnt down. Then they burnt down the day centre, and people were just walking around Lesbos without food, without paper, without records. And then a whole group of Nazi Greeks descended and started bashing people and raping. And so it was the locals who set up centres for them. This was after we'd gone. It was the locals who found a couple of acres of land. It was the locals who'd been in the classes for a few weeks and discussed soils and water and economics and They were the ones who took over because the NGO left. So this risk to maintain the project has some fairly solid components that make it continue. Then when I come home, I include those NGO leaders back into our group, and I leave them $2,000 each and say, write a project proposals. Here's the money. Write up a project you want, do the project you want, and send us photographs and a few words. So nearly 2 years later from Bangladesh, they're doing the most enormous permaculture projects. It's just multiplied and multiplied and grown, and it's everywhere. So that sort of way of working is really important, because otherwise it's not embedded in the country.
Yeah.
You teach and go away and tell them to do this, or you might set up a garden one morning as part of teaching zones or something, but it's not really there unless you've actually left the people in the country who are probably going to take it over.